So, welcome to another episode of the Rediscovery channel, where each week myself, Stiller, and my good friend Ivor, we look at a different topic. And the idea is that the other person may or may not have heard of the topic before. In this way, we rediscover history together. And Ivor, this week I want to talk to you about the biggest gun in history. Any idea where it may have been and who?
I think it's called. I think it's called the Paris gun. It was used in World War I to bombard Paris from a distance. Is that right?
Ooh, no. Actually, it is a different place altogether. This little baby was built in Iraq.
Oh.
That's where they were building it. And do you want to guess who the proud owner was going to be?
Saddam Hussein?
Yes. Yeah.
Did he build it so he could hit Israel or something?
Well, that's the story. So
right.
He never got to finish it, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Well, not to hit Israel. No. That's not. Anyway. That's actually not what I would have liked. But although maybe if he had pointed in a different direction, I wouldn't have felt so bad about it. But it's an interesting story because the gun actually was initially designed to do something completely different. You want to guess what they wanted to do with it? It was, by the way, the inventor was a Canadian called Gerald Bull. He was one of the world's leading artillery experts. And guess what he wanted to do? And it's related
he went to work for Saddam Hussein.
Yeah,
I guess the pay wasn't very good in Canada.
He got it. And he got excellent benefits. Yeah.
Probably got some unscrupulous benefits over there.
Yeah. You got this. No. So, any serious guesses? What he wanted to do?
All right. I'm guessing that I'm going to guess based on what you said that the purpose of the gun was to launch some unconventional object.
Yes.
Like maybe gas or something. I don't know.
Some gas because he's Canadian.
No. How does that relate to gas? No, like I'm thinking
have oil, right? That's yeah.
Well, but Saddam Hussein, what I remember when I was a kid in all the newspapers about him is like he used a lot of gas against his enemies, like mustard gas, and I think it was mustard gas. But he would gas like the Kurds, and he would also launch stuff at Israel. It's kind of like he was trying to. Kind of reminds me of Germany actually a little bit during World War I. They would use that stuff.
Yeah, I think it was actually the Germans that helped him create the mustard gas, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, his party, with the Ba'ath Party, was based off of. It was like a spin-off of Nazi Germany, the same kind of party, same platform, or similar platform.
Yeah, which makes it interesting because he was allied to the United States for the longest time to fight Iraq.
So was Francisco Franco was also he was a fascist too, but he switched sides, and because he switched sides, the Allies didn't blow him up and over. They let him live and continue.
Yeah. No, I mean, I actually don't know too much. I know about the Kurdic gas attacks. And then those WMDs that never, they existed at some point, but then they were supposedly a threat and they never found them. That's also a story, but I won't do it about that one.
Yeah, who knows about that?
Well, I mean, that was all basically fabricated, which is interesting as well, because the people that created, basically built a war on that, they're still walking around freely. Although one of them died recently, but the guy in the UK and the guy in the US are still they still have opinions on stuff, and then we're supposed to take them seriously, which I find that to be very interesting. But yeah, no, this gun was actually it was never finished, but it was supposed to be called the Big Babylon, and it was supposed to be there to launch to revolutionize space launches. Yeah.
So it was trying to launch capsules into space.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea was it would have been, and so there are still some parts of it on permanent display at the Royal Armouries collection at Fort Nelson, Hampshire. But they're only a part, so there are only a few remaining pieces for what's supposed to be a supergun, so the biggest gun ever. And unlike some of the guns that have been built, like there are a couple ones. There's like a list that I found, and like the top guns are mostly like Russian or no, actually they're Nazi Germany. It's like place 1, 2, and 3, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And they're all like real part built, like the biggest one has to be like on 2 different railroad tracks just to move it. So they're not practical at all. So it never went anywhere. And this one was supposed to be stationary, if I'm not mistaken. And it would have been 156 meters long, which is 512 feet, embedded inside a hill. And this super gun would have been able to hopefully fire satellites into orbit. So Gerald Bull was the one who came up, and he, when he wanted to build this gun, it wasn't like, where should I go and where should I build this gun? Like, maybe I should ask Saddam Hussein. It wasn't, but it was just. Let me tell a little bit more about him. So, Bull, he began working with the Canadian and U.S. governments researching supergun technology in the 1960s. And initially, engineers used his designs to test supersonic flight without the need for an expensive wind tunnel, because you could just fire projectiles over short distances through the barrel of a large gun instead. Although he would end up spending much of his career in government-funded weapons research, designing rockets and guns for warring countries, his personal ambition was to use his designs to launch satellites instead of missiles. And the concept is actually similar to what you have now with SpaceX and then the new space race that's taking place now. It was to lower cost, because basically what you did with most of the rockets that were used previously to SpaceX is missiles that can land at least I think about 2/3 of the rocket gets reused. And back in the day, they would launch a rocket and just basically it would come down in the desert somewhere or in the ocean. It's like building a plane each time and then crashing the plane at the destination. It makes it very expensive. And his idea was that the cost could be lowered if you would just have kind of like a stationary plane where you kind of would get ejected instead. So rather than throwing away the first stage of a rocket, you could use a large gun for the first stage. And this would enable it to be reused and easily serviced. And in 1961, Bull began working on the High Altitude Research Project, HARP, which was a joint venture between the U.S. and Canadian governments. Using modified ex-Navy guns, Bull and his colleagues fired weather probes into suborbit and back down again. But then, because of the Vietnam War, the project was canned in 1967 due to budget cuts. And this was before they could get any object into orbit. But it teased Bull with the possibility of creating a satellite launching supergun, a space gun. So, yeah, so the HARP project would launch guns. The HARP launch guns could reach 2 kilometers a second, and they used if you use gas to power the projectiles, you could go much faster. So they could really replace the first 1.5 stages of a conventional launch vehicle. So you might think actually like, oh well, what about the G-force of acceleration?
Yeah.
But apparently this is actually exaggerated. And military artillery shells today have GPS and laser guidance, optics, and electronics that they survive these accelerations as well. So it can be done. So we know actually that stuff can survive if you build it the right way.
Yeah, stuff can survive. That's what I was thinking. Something like that might be able to launch objects and machines into space, but I imagine that the G-forces would be too much for a living organism.
Yeah.
I don't think you could launch a human that way. I mean,
No.
you could probably, but it's going to be a one-way launch.
Yeah. No. So, but for satellites and stuff, like as long as it's like not like delicate stuff in there, you could launch things cheaply, and like launching satellites are before SpaceX anyway. It was extremely expensive. And even the shuttle aircraft, the space shuttle, was supposed to be much cheaper because you reuse it, but because of the heat shield. Which required so much maintenance after each time they used it, it ended up being extremely expensive as well. So yeah, but punching through the lower, which is the denser part of the atmosphere at high speed, is an intense heat transfer problem. But also when you're using a gun, but you can use ablative coatings and heat shields on the nose of the projectile. To cover up the material, and in this case it's a one-way trip, so it's not like those shields would have to be reused, because you would fire up the satellite and then it would just basically fulfill its function there. And Bull was convinced that his supergun designs were the way forward, and he just needed the funding. So he needed somebody with a lot of money. And an interest in this kind of technology. And the problem was that by the 1970s, unfortunately, the rest of the world had lost interest in superguns, and they were now looking elsewhere. And to find money, he began to sell weapons and continued to develop his space supergun as a side project. And then he set up a private company called the Space Research Corporation of Quebec. And he soon started selling arms to the South African government. So in 1976, Bull was arrested in South Africa for violating the United Nations arms embargo. And he served 6 months in a U.S. prison. And then on release, he began selling to South Africa again. And this time he was fined $55,000 for international arms dealing. So yeah, I guess he cared a lot about his passion, and he was willing to, to do anything to make it work. So fed up with the Canadian and U.S. governments, he moved to Brussels, Belgium. And he began operating through a European company. He seemed to become more dark towards the end of his career, and more of like this evil genius kind of person. But he was slowly alienating himself from Western world and culture, because I guess he felt let down. And then in 1981, the Iraqi government contacted Bull to design artillery for them to use in the Iraq-Iran war, which when Saddam was still the good guy, right?
Yeah, interesting how that works, right?
Yeah, as long as it's useful, then they're the good guys. It's interesting, right? But anyway,
look the other way.
Yeah, well, even support him. So I think a lot of the planes were French and American. A lot of the I think anyway, we should probably do one about the Iraq-Iran war. It's from the weapons perspective, it's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I remember reading about that when I was a kid. I was a little kid. I mean, not reading too much about it, but like it was in the newspaper, and some of the pictures of that were on the front page, and I saw one of it, and my dad was reading. I was like, Dad, what's that? What happened to those people? And I don't remember. He told me it's the Iran-Iraq war. They're fighting each other, and I don't remember like what he said it was about. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to know everything, but I think that we're not going to get the straight story on that stuff because there's so much propaganda and false information deliberately um, that's been deliberately fed. And I know somebody. I used to know somebody from Iraq, and she told me like everything bad they say about Saddam Hussein is a lie. He's like, Saddam Hussein didn't do anything wrong. I was like, okay. I mean, I doubt that, but yeah, it probably does. It'd probably be worth it for us to look into more on that, find out. If anyone's interested.
The second Iraq war, or second Gulf War, I should say, was based on a lie.
Yeah, there was no active aggression.
They used a lot of propaganda and they were saying that the Iraqi soldiers were taking Kuwaiti babies from the hospitals and throwing them like on the floor and killing them, and it was all just a lie. It was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States that was like media briefed by the CIA to tell the story, to tell this lie, and then it was broadcasted on CNN just to create consent for the public so people would support a war there. So I don't know about what he did before that, to be honest. So
yeah, I think I heard that stuff too when I was a kid. I remember the first Iraq war, they put stuff on the news and they're like, oh, this innocent Kuwaiti millionaire was swimming in his swimming pool, and the Iraqis came and they put electric wires into the pool. Like they told him to come out, he wouldn't come out, so they put electric wires into the pool and electrocute him, and they do this and they do that. And I was like, oh man, these people are so bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of any of that is true. I do know that the ancestors of these people in the ancient times did smash babies open and throw people onto fires and stuff. Like we talked about some of that stuff before, like with Ashurnasirpal II, and they would boast about it on their engravings. But I don't think I don't think Saddam Hussein. I'm sure he did torture people because that's pretty much just the way of doing things over there. But I doubt that. I doubt he would have like smashed open babies and stuff. That would be very bad PR and very stupid, and a very difficult matter to consider.
Oh, and that never happened. Actually, I dare say that as an amateur historian, that's actually that was completely fabricated. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff was completely fabricated. I do believe, though, that that it was the kind of system where you couldn't just like, hey, Saddam Hussein is an idiot. He's got a stupid must. Like they probably would take you off the street for that. But I think that Saddam Hussein. I mean, it's the Middle East, right? There's going to be some kind of dictator over there. You just have to accept it. Like it's either going to be a secular fascist dictator or it's going to be an Islamo-fascist dictator. Either way, it's going to be some kind of fascism.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the Ba'ath Party and the philosophy behind it. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. So maybe we could do a topic about that, or maybe somebody could write about that in the comments. But anyway, back to this time, Saddam Hussein. He was actually the head of military or defense secretary actually for Iraq, and he liked Bull and his designs. He hired him to work for their artillery problems. And at this time, it wasn't that strange because Iraq wasn't seen as a threat to the West. And Hussein at the time, he wanted to be a leader of the Arab world and kind of show his success with technology. And he also wanted some sort of space program. So this would have appealed to Bull. So he was actually a great catch for Hussein as an expert to have on his team. So in 1988, the Iraqi government paid Bull $25 million to begin Project Babylon, the first true space gun project, on condition that he continued to work on their artillery. So the Project Babylon began with 3 superguns, 2 full-size Big Babylon, which were 1,000 millimeter caliber guns, and a prototype of 350 millimeter caliber, which was called Baby Babylon. And but the full size would have been 156 meters in length with a 1 meter bore, and in total it would have weighed 1,510 tons. Far too big to be transportable, so instead it would have been mounted on a 45-degree angle on the hillside. And Big Babylon would have overshadowed all previous supergun designs for sign, including guns built for military use, like the giant German guns that we talked about, as well as the later space gun designs. And actually, there's only estimates, other details like launch velocity because it wasn't completed. And it would have used 9 tons of special supergun propellant, but it would have been theoretically capable of firing a 600 kilogram projectile across 1,000 kilometers. It's about 600 miles, I think. Putting Kuwait and Iran within striking distance from inside Iraq. So, yeah. You could have done all kinds of things with it, but it wouldn't it would have to be one destination if you would have wanted it for artillery use, because it wasn't mobile. You would have to put it on a hill, and it would have been mounted. So theoretically, you could shoot it at Kuwait with gas in it or something, but it would have been a single city. So anyway, it's not very effective or efficient. Although it would have been fast. So
yeah, I think. I know the Germans, they made a big gun during World War I that was one of the biggest guns ever used in war. I guess it's not the biggest, but they made that. They built it in Paris. They built it in France, and they used it to just shell Paris from a great distance. And then the whole thing about shooting stuff into space is actually an old French movie from, I think, the 1890s or something like that. It's a silent movie. It's called The Voyage to the Moon, where they go to the moon. They have these guys. They get in a capsule and they launch them to the moon with a big, huge gun. And then later on, they come back to Earth. But I think The Voyage to the Moon was based on a Jules Verne story.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a Jules Verne book, and that book inspired a lot of the first people that were studying rockets. And I did an episode on that. I don't know what episode it is, like the founding fathers of rocketry.
Yeah.
And they were inspired exactly by this book from Jules Verne. So
yeah, and since this guy's a French Canadian, that may have been what gave him this idea in the first place.
Yeah, probably, very likely.
And then the Iraq, there's oil there, so that would have been just what he needed in order to make it work.
Oh, I mean, oil money.
Oil money and oil, fossil fuels, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they would use. They would use a very specific kind of ignition, and you had to calculate it very precisely, because you couldn't just have one big giant ignition, because of the giant. Now it's 156 meters.
The length of the barrel.
Was in feet? Of the barrel, you wouldn't have to have a sustained release. So you would have to do very complicated calculations in order to figure out how to make it work. And by the way, I said, like it could do 600 kilograms, which I think is around 1,200 pounds or something, or 1,300 pounds. And with just direct, but it could also have been used to launch 2,000 kilograms, around 4,000 to 5,000 pounds, using a rocket-assisted projectile. So you would shoot the rocket, and then at some point, the rocket would ignite and take over, which is similar to what you have now with that plane that Virgin billionaire is using, which it's launched by a plane. I think it's a 747 or something. Or now it's custom designed, and then it gets really up high to the stratosphere, and then the rocket is dropped and it ignites, and you can travel to the edge of space.
I've seen a lot of talk about, I think it's a railgun, when it comes to speculation about terraforming, and also about mining raw minerals from the moon. They talk about using some kind of giant gun. I think it's a railgun. I could be wrong. To blast the stuff into space, and that would save on fuel and such. And with the moon's lower gravity, it would be more efficient. And then also as a means of as a means of terraforming, I saw it in that use as well, like blasting ice from the outer solar system towards the inner planets that you want to terraform. My son, he used to watch all this Kurzgesatz and Brightside, so that's where I saw this stuff. I'm wondering now. I'm thinking maybe it might be something similar, some similar principle. Physics is not my strong point, however. So why was the project aborted?
Yeah, so let me continue. So anyway, had it been able to finish it, so the cost would have been roughly about $1,700 to $1,800 per kilogram. For NASA, it's about $22,000 per kilogram to launch the satellite. So it would have revolutionized the launching of cheap satellites. So for that time, it would have, the late 80s, early 90s, would have been revolutionary, and it would have really changed the game. I don't know how much it is for SpaceX. I think it's still more than $1,800 per kilogram.
SpaceX is trying to put people into space, though. They're not just trying to,
Yeah, but the Falcon 9 is the one they're using now. It's partially reusable, and so it has, the cost per launch is $62 million, and reuse it's $50 million. But then what is their? How much the payload is 22 tons, so 50 million divided by 22 tons. Anyway, yeah, I don't have my calculator right now, but
if you go into all that math, people are gonna check out on us anyways.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, I wonder if it would have been cheaper or not. Maybe I should just I'll put it in the text. It was cheaper or not. In the video. Yeah.
Put
Check
the
us
extra
out on
information.
YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. Are you posting these things on Rumble yet, Ivor?
You have to give them to me first.
All right. So he wasn't Bull wasn't the only one who saw the potential in superguns, and experiments were also happening in the rest of the world, because the idea was like, hey, you know what, this might actually work. So there was a guy called John Hunter using magnetic guns to work, and also using gas-powered guns, using a few $1 million, and the project named Super HARP or Sharp, which was actually a homage to Bull's earlier endeavors. A powder gun like the one used in Harp and by Harp before, and a gas gun like Sharp, both worked in the same basic way. So it was using expanding gases. So yeah, I guess you need oil to create the gases. So you're right there, Ivor.
Well, wait, no, not if you're talking about like nitrogen or some other type of gas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can make pretty much any gas out of oil. So yeah,
no, but
gunpowder apparently was too hot.
Well, yeah,
and it expands too quickly. So apparently they use hydrogen in some of the gas guns and maybe other gases as well.
Hydrogen is I guess volatile, but no, you don't get hydrogen from fossil fuels. I mean, you can, but you could get it. You can get it from water. You can get it from the atmosphere. I mean, you don't need to have like an oil rich. I mean, I guess the revenue from oil can make a lot of things possible, though. So there's that. That's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but yeah. So Bull actually he knew that Iraq could use this gun for to fire missiles on their enemies. But he said, like if they would do that, it would be extremely impractical because of the size. You can't hide a gun like that. Everybody would know where it was. So it would be easy to destroy it. It would be extremely slow to fire. It would only be pointed in one direction. And everyone would know where it was because you could probably see it from space because of the size of it. And everybody would know immediately if it had been fired because of the seismic tremors.
This gun is for peaceful uses. Oh,
Yes.
It's a mostly peaceful gun.
Well, I mean, there's also the U.S. experimented using nuclear warhead on guns. So, I mean, I can understand why it still made people anxious. And I think actually the North Koreans are also looking at using a giant gun to deliver nuclear payload because you can't stop it because of the speed. It's much harder to stop compared to.
But then it's just going to go to one place. How many times are you going to nuke that same location?
Well, I mean, you can just use it once. You just blow up Seoul, right? That's the idea.
It'd be cheaper to just have somebody take a dirty bomb, like have somebody just like some terrorist go in there and detonate something for you rather than spend millions and billions of dollars on a one time. I don't know, man. I think for war applications, something like that is 100% impractical. But for getting stuff into space, like ore and also machinery, that would be great, especially on a low gravity world. Like the moon. If you're mining it and you need to get that ore, you could do it with a lot less energy because the moon's gravity is less, and it would make more sense.
It would also make a good planetary defense mechanism for asteroids if they were coming, right?
Well, but again,
then it's not mobile.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Asteroids. I've actually been seeing a lot of news articles about this asteroid and that asteroid passing near us. So
they're doing an experiment now with NASA and SpaceX. They're trying to nudge one and see what happens.
Oh, great!
Project
I'm sure that'll go well.
Yeah. Hey. Anyway.
Yeah. We need a second moon.
So let me continue. Sorry. So Baby Babylon, the smallest one, right? The what do you call it? The markup. The 45 meter long prototype. It was completed in 1989 and mounted on the hillside, and they started testing it. This one would have been easily able to launch a projectile 750 kilometers long. And then components for the Big Babylon gun were manufactured in Great Britain, Germany, France, Spain, Switzerland, and Italy. And that's how we have some of the enormous steel pipes on display at Fort Nelson, because they were manufactured in the UK by Sheffield Forge Masters, known for manufacturing high quality steel. But the ending, guess how it ended?
Iraq War?
No. March 22, 1990. Bull, something happened to him. He committed suicide by being shot 3 times in the back, twice in the head.
What?
No, I'm kidding about the suicide part, of course. As he entered his Brussels apartment, no one witnessed his assassination. The gun was silenced, and the killer was never identified. In the months before his killing, Bull's flat was broken into on several occasions. So that may have been a warning in hindsight. And the New York Times reported that when police arrived at the scene, they found the key still in his door and his unopened briefcase containing nearly $20,000 in cash. So it wasn't a robbery. So yeah, it's not known who killed him. It could have been Mossad. Yeah, it could have been CIA. But yeah, after his death, Project Babylon went cold. And 2 weeks later, the UK customs seized the supergun components leaving the port of T-Sport. And then Iraq invaded Kuwait shortly after. And this ended the Western involvement with the Iraqi regime.
That's sad. And probably it was a state actor. Like, it sounds like there wasn't really an investigation done. I mean, if they didn't find the guy, it probably was some government agent.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. So anyway, are superguns ever coming back? Maybe. Some people have tried. So in 2009, Hunter, the guy I mentioned before, and 2 other colleagues, they began a new venture off the back of HARP, and it was called Quick Launch, and it would hope to use hydrogen-powered gas guns to fire fuel to space station depots for use in manned space flights to the moon and to Mars, which is actually still not a bad idea. So that was supposed to be 1,100 meters long. It's about 600 miles. 600. No, I don't know feet. I have no idea. Look it up. Maybe I'll include it in the text. It's 1,100 meters. It's over a kilometer. So it's and 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So yeah, so they wanted to finish this, but it never got going because of internal issues. Yeah, and now you have, of course, SpaceX and others trying to build these reusable rocket launchers. Falcon 9 is operational, and Elon Musk is working hard now at Boca Chica to build the Super Heavy, or I'm not sure what the latest name for it, but that's a fully reusable rocket that will be able to land. And it looks like that superguns are kind of out of the picture. Although even with the new one that Musk is working on now, if you want to refuel it to go to Mars, I think you need to launch like 8, 9, or 10 times just to make it work and to get enough fuel up there each time, because it takes so much fuel to get the spacecraft up into orbit. And then, of course, you need a lot of fuel for your spacecraft that's already hovering in orbit to make it to Mars and it not take forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, if we ever do manage to establish colonies, probably it would start with our solar system. Then there would be, one of the ways to pay for it would be all the mining operations that you could do, and that's where space guns would be. It would become more of a thing, because on these smaller worlds with little to no atmosphere, the energy requirements would be less to escape the force of gravity, and you also don't have to worry about wind shear. So it would be a very practical way of getting the ore into space to ship it elsewhere, and also maybe stripping the ice from some of the moons in the outer solar system. If you need to bring water to of course, I don't know if you do that, maybe they just evaporate as they get closer to the sun. But anyways, I've been looking into some of that stuff. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. I wonder they could maybe maybe they could redirect an asteroid if you land a gun on an asteroid or a comet. Which one? What's the difference? Anyway.
Okay, comet is made of ice, and it evaporates.
Yeah, quickly. So then I'm talking about a comet. If you could land a gun on a comet and then fire, if you have some kind of auto launch, maybe it would fire ice in one direction and then divert its direction of it, and you could crash it into Mars, for example. So you could do some try to add more water to the planet and create oxygen on the planet and do terraforming. Anyway, there are different ways. Yeah, that'd be cool. I feel like we should just play around with stuff like that. It's basically like having your own sandbox video game. There's not a whole lot you can break, so
Yeah, there's nothing there to be destroyed anyway.
yeah, like why not just play around with it and see what happens? You know, like launch some bacteria up there that can grow under those circumstances. And anyway, shoot some space ice in its direction. Try to re-engage its core. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem with Mars is you have to get the magnetosphere going again.
Yeah, because the core is solidified. It's not. You don't have a magnetic field anymore. But
I had some physicist that I was talking to a little bit, and he proposed some methods whereby it could be done. I didn't entirely understand everything he said. I'll see if I can find that comment again. Maybe I can messages he sent me. But yeah, it's interesting. You know, if I was good at physics, I would be doing a scientific career instead of what I'm doing now. I'd be doing that stuff. Of course, who knows? You might have to work for like some fascist dictator to get anything done.
Yeah, you might get shot in the. You might get shot in the head. Yeah.
You might commit suicide by 3 bullets to the back of the
head. Yeah. Anyway,
or you get robbed with all the money still in your suitcase.
Exactly. But yeah, that was my story. I heard about this like on Discovery Channel or something like decades ago. It always stuck with me. It's like, oh man, I wish you had finished that. That would have been cool. So you know, being a space junkie, you know. So, but yeah, I hope you liked it and learned something new. Other than that, I want to say like, share, subscribe. Give us your tips or stories. We're likely to take them. And other than that, Ivor, I want to close off the video and tell people see you next week. See you in the next one.
All right. Great.